Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. On the afternoon of May 7, 1915, the British ocean liner Lusitania is torpedoed without warning by a German submarine off the south coast of Ireland. Within 20 minutes, the vessel sank into the Celtic Sea. Of 1,959 passengers and crew, 1,198 people drowned, including 128 Americans. The attack aroused considerable indignation in the United States, but Germany defended the action, noting that it had issued warnings of its intent to attack all ships, neutral or otherwise, that entered the war zone around Britain. When World War I erupted in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson pledged neutrality for the United States, a position that the vast majority of Americans favored. Britain, however, was one of America's closest trading partners, and tension soon arose between the United States and Germany over the latter's attempted quarantine of the British Isles. Several U.S. ships traveling to Britain were damaged or sank from German mines, and in February 1915, Germany announced unrestricted submarine warfare in the waters around Britain. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel. In early May 1915, several New York newspapers published a warning by the German embassy in Washington that Americans traveling on British or Allied ships in war zones did so at their own risk. The announcement was placed on the same page as an advertisement of the imminent sailing of the Lusitania liner from New York back to Liverpool. The sinkings of merchant ships off the south coast of Ireland prompted the British Admiralty to warn the Lusitania to avoid the area or take simple evasive action, such as zigzagging to confuse U-boats plotting the vessel's course. The captain of the Lusitania ignored these recommendations, and at 2:12 p.m. on May 7, the 32,000-ton ship was hit by an exploding torpedo on its starboard side. The torpedo blast was followed by a larger explosion, probably of the ship's boilers, and the ship sank in 20 minutes. It was revealed that the Lusitania was carrying about 173 tons of war munitions for Britain, which the Germans cited as further justification for the attack. The United States eventually sent 3 notes to Berlin protesting the action, and Germany apologized and pledged to end unrestricted submarine warfare. In November, however, a U-boat sank an Italian liner without warning, killing 272 people, including 27 Americans. Public opinion in the United States began to turn irrevocably against Germany. On January 31, 1917, Germany, determined to win its war of attrition against the Allies, announced that it would resume unrestricted warfare in war zone waters. 3 days later, the United States broke diplomatic relations with Germany, and just hours after that the American liner Lusitania was sunk by a German U-boat. On February 22, Congress passed a $250 million arms appropriations bill intended to make the United States ready for war. In late March, Germany sank 4 more U.S. merchant ships, and on April 2 President Wilson appeared before Congress and called for a declaration of war against Germany. On April 4, the Senate voted to declare war against Germany, and 2 days later the House of Representatives endorsed the declaration. With that, America entered World War I. The ship, once a symbol of transatlantic elegance and speed, was on a voyage from New York to Liverpool when it was struck without warning. Within just 18 minutes, the massive vessel went down, taking 1,198 lives with it, including 128 Americans. The attack shocked the world, not just because of the loss of civilian life, but because it was seen as a brutal act of war against innocent passengers. Germany defended its actions by claiming the Lusitania was carrying contraband war materials, a claim that was later confirmed to some extent, as the ship was transporting rifle ammunition and other military supplies in its cargo. However, the presence of civilians, including women and children, made the sinking highly controversial. The incident was seized upon by Allied propaganda and used to portray Germany as barbaric and inhumane. In the United States, which was still officially neutral, public opinion turned sharply against Germany. The deaths of American citizens sparked outrage and added to growing tensions between the two nations. The Lusitania tragedy became a turning point in the war. Though it did not immediately lead the United States into the conflict, it played a key role in shifting American attitudes and laying the groundwork for future involvement. The US demanded that Germany curtail its policy of unrestricted submarine warfare, and for a time, Germany complied. But when Germany resumed unrestricted attacks in 1917, the United States finally entered the war. The sinking of the Lusitania remains one of the most infamous naval disasters in modern history, both a human tragedy and a pivotal moment in the global conflict. In the days leading up to the Lusitania's final voyage, warnings had been issued. The German embassy in the United States had even placed newspaper ads cautioning passengers that any ship sailing under the British flag could be considered a target in the war zone around the British Isles. Despite this, nearly 2,000 people boarded the Lusitania in New York on May 1, 1915, trusting in the speed and reputation of the ship, and believing that no German submarine would dare attack such a prominent passenger vessel. Among the passengers were wealthy businessmen, families, celebrities, and even infants, many of whom believed they were safe on a civilian liner. The German submarine U-20, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Walter Schwieger, had been patrolling the Irish Sea, hunting Allied ships. On the afternoon of May 7, the U-20 spotted the Lusitania and fired a single torpedo. The torpedo struck the ship on the starboard side near the bridge, and a secondary, much larger explosion followed, possibly due to munitions in the cargo hold. Chaos erupted on board. With the ship listing severely and sinking rapidly, many lifeboats were impossible to launch. Some capsized as they were lowered. Others were destroyed by the ship's tilt. Survivors later described harrowing scenes of people jumping into the cold Atlantic waters, desperate to escape. Among the dead were not only passengers but also crew members who had tried to help others escape. The scale of the disaster quickly made headlines around the world. The British government and press portrayed the event as a brutal, inhumane attack on civilians. In Germany, there was celebration among some, who saw the sinking as a victory against the British blockade. However, others, including German Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg, feared the political fallout, especially with the United States. President Woodrow Wilson, though cautious and reluctant to go to war, sent strong diplomatic protests to Berlin. In the years following the sinking, the Lusitania became a symbol of lost innocence and the horrors of modern warfare. Memorials were held across the Allied nations, and poems, songs, and newspaper illustrations mourned the dead. The shipwreck still rests on the seafloor near Ireland, and diving expeditions have explored it in search of answers and artifacts. Debate continues over whether the British government used the ship to transport more war materials than they admitted, and whether that justified the German attack. Regardless, the loss of the Lusitania stands as a grim reminder of how war can reach even those who believe they are far from the battlefield.